Leonardo da Vinci, from the sensible to the intelligible, La Bella Principessa. So let's neglect this beautiful painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Cut from one of four copies printed in the 1490s, the Sforziedes were dedicated to the family of Duke Ludovico Sforza and his father. Each one was illuminated with a differently illustrated frontispiece, according to its dedication. One is preserved in the National Library of Florence in Paris, another in the British Library in London, the third, dismembered, is in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, and the fourth is in Warsaw. The copy from which this parchment was extracted, preserved in the National Library of Warsaw, was given on the occasion of the marriage in 1496 of Ludovico Sforza's natural daughter Bianca to his loyal commander, Galeazzo Sanseverino. The stitching marks on the edge of the portrait indicate that it came from this book. While a National Geographic television crew filmed the moment, engineer Pascal Cotte left, and art historian Martin Kemp inserted a copy of the drawing into the empty space. The page aligned in the space, as did the stitching holes. The date the painting was removed from the book and the reason for its removal remain a mystery. Works of art. First of all, we cannot forget that a work of art is an object of aesthetic enjoyment that transmits sensations and emotions, especially painting. However, in the 20th century, Heidegger, German philosopher, tells us that when interpreting works of art, it is necessary to unfold the artist's thought at the moment of creation. Thus, we must seek the true essence, carefully analyzing each detail of the production and asking the work what it is and how it is. But is it possible for the same work to transmit strong sensations and emotions and at the same time contain a strong philosophical, humanist, critical, or historical thought about the society in which we live? Do painting, La Belle Principessa. Leonardo da Vinci's paintings have a component of philosophy, humanism, and denunciation of cruel acts carried out by institutions or private individuals. He stated, "I will find a way to denounce the cruel acts of the powerful." But where is the message and how is it conveyed? What a beautiful embroidery on the dress sleeve. I will explain it later. Warning, it seems silly. Viewing only with the left eye gives more depth and realism. Okay, so here we have an enlarged version of the embroidery on Bianca's shirt. We're going to take a closer look at this design, this painting by Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, let's analyze this embroidery. The first step is to mentally transform the convex surface of the shoulder into a concave surface. That is, we have the shoulder facing outwards, so what we have to do mentally is turn it inwards to a concave surface, where the upper edge creates a bottom, where this triangle becomes almost flat, and the upper edge is tucked inside the shoulder. This is the first step to be taken. So now we have a diagram of how it should look. The top part of this embroidery should be blended, flattened, where that vertex kind of goes into the shoulder and the top part is almost flat. Where, if we look from above towards the middle of this embroidery, it creates an illusion of depth. And if you only look with your left eye, because the left eye gives a greater three-dimensionality and greater depth, and the details start to appear. This won't be simple, it's complicated, because this is done in layers, and therefore you shouldn't push the foreground to the background. Quite the opposite, but we'll analyze that better later. The second step you should take is to look, I repeat, only with your left eye. It sounds crazy, but it's true. At the back of the painting, at the back, where those arrows are, the tips of those arrows. Look down there, from top to bottom. That's perspective, what they call aerial perspective. Back then they called it aerial perspective. Today we call it three-dimensionality. And this is done in layers, and you should, with your left eye, try to separate the various layers, make slices from the foreground to the background, and try to discover the areas between them, because only then can you analyze the painting. This isn't a painting that takes the whole thing from the foreground to the background, you know? All of this is painted aerially, all of this is painted, let's say, in the air. If we're on a plane and we look at a forest, we see each pine tree down below or each tree scattered around. Here it ends up being the same thing. But this takes time, it requires perspective, it requires a lot of time and calm, and trying to analyze the aerial view, what is painted in the air. So, they look down. Where are these arrows? Persistently and for a long time. These are not things that happen in a minute, sometimes not even in 10, not in 15, not in half an hour. So this takes time. That's why nobody discovers it, because nobody has time to see these things. And this even has movement. This is a reality. This is reality. So, to see this, you need to slice the thing well, see the layers, look three-dimensionally, and see where each little line is, in what position it is, in the slice. Are you noticing? And see the movement, because this causes movement. You move your eye from side to side, always looking for movement, focusing down there, from top to bottom, always from top to bottom, but also looking at the space, right? There you go. As I said, if you're flying by plane, you see all those little dots, that's what you have to look for. It's a three-dimensionality that exists between the various layers. One layer is in front, the other layer comes right behind, then another. It's a three-dimensionality that exists here, and you have to try to discover the movement that's there with your mind. Putting your eye from side to side, seeing if you can provoke that movement in your mind. This takes time because Leonardo da Vinci said something very important. Movement can be caused by the person standing still and what moves passing in front of us moving. We are standing still and the object moves ahead and we see that it is moving. Or with the object standing still, we can also provoke this movement with our eyes, moving our eyes, therefore, with time, persistently and for a long time, and looking for this movement and trying to analyze the various parts in which this is painted, the various layers. It took me 20 years to discover this. So I know it's true because I can see the movement, I can see the smoke, I can see all those things because I'll tell you what it is. In my understanding, this is a chair of cruelty of the Inquisition, where they sat people on top of a brazier, and deep down, after we analyze this with time and persistence and look deep down at those orange parts, what appears is an ember that is at the bottom, and the blacker parts are the smoke that rises from below to the top. There is a whole mixture of heat and smoke rising up there, and it is perfectly real, but it has to be seen with time, with a lot of time, because it is a new experience and it is perhaps the first time that you are looking at this. And it doesn't appear like that at first. In my understanding, this is a chair from the Inquisition where they burned people. There is an intense ember at the bottom. The heat is those orange parts that rise. And the smoke, those black parts with small white parts that come up there. We have some ashes on the left and on the right side. There are some whitish parts that rise that are the ashes. We have the white parts, which are the smoke also connected to the ashes and all that. And this flame all comes from up there. It's a reality. It's a reality. This is done three-dimensionally. Therefore, what goes up together in this triangle. It all comes from the bottom up. It comes from the foreground to the upper vertex. Aerially, it's painted aerially, but after we start to see it, we see that the smoke and the heat and the embers, everything is in there. There's a huge ember and a huge amount of smoke and heat in there. This is a very well done three-dimensional reality. This man was an incomparable artist. There is not and will not be an artist capable of creating a work in this way. In my understanding, this is a chair of cruelty of the Inquisition, where they sat people on top of a brazier, and deep down, after we analyze this with time, and now we have a chart here to show you how you should analyze the artwork, how you should view the artwork. We have the concave shoulder, where the vertex goes down there, and we have the way the smoke rises from bottom to top. This is how you should see it, looking down from the air and seeing that the smoke, the heat, everything rises. Look only with your left eye because both eyes get in the way. They bring everything together and can't separate the layers. He used this left eye technique, which has been more than proven to be true. This seeing with the left eye thing I discovered on my own, but then I researched it and came to the conclusion that scientists can confirm that yes, it's true. That seeing only with the left eye gives much more definition of the details, much more realism, and much more three-dimensionality. Here's another slide for you to calmly look at the drawing, looking down at the background where the lighter part is. Because only with time do the details come to light and the strength of the image appear. And the movement, too. Leonardo said, it doesn't matter whether the eye is still and the object in front of us moves and we see the movement, or whether the object is still and the eye moves and also creates movement. He says that simply moving the eye, even if the object is still, is enough to create the illusion of movement. That's what's happening here. He created a drawing in such a way that if we move our eyes back and forth, up and down, and manage to separate the various layers, we end up creating a movement of the smoke rising and the fireplace down below, fully lit, and all the smoke coming up. But this takes time, and it took me 20 years to reach these conclusions and perfectly see the movement that is being created there. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes time because Leonardo didn't give things away for free either. He was a great artist, but he was also a great critic of the society he lived in, and he used painting and sfumato. Because sfumato is these subtle shadows that we can only analyze and see the detail of with a lot of time, and if we have willpower, if we have the intelligence to be able to see things. So we have to have the desire to want to know. He forced people to think and be creative and to try to make people intelligent and really want to know. To have knowledge of things, they had to fight for them. So if you want to discover the message of the painting, you have to fight for it. So we analyze the shoulder area where there's this fire, all this smoke coming up, but I'm sure there's much more. Right there on the shoulder, taking away that part with the fire, then upwards where it's smoking, there are many little lines, many things that look like little machines. But it's very difficult to put them together and understand what it really is. Just like in the hair and behind the braids, all of that also has a mystery that I try to solve and keep trying to figure out, but then I can't bring it all together to get an idea of what it really is because it's complicated. It's very complicated. But there's much more here to see and discover. The painting La Belle Princesa is certainly a denunciation. It is undoubtedly a chair with embers in the background and smoke rising from the entire opening. What it intends to denounce is an act of cruelty by burning whoever is seated. Was it during the Inquisition, or is it an act of someone with power? Does it have anything to do with the power of Ludovico Sforza or his commander Galeazzo Sanseverino? Why did Leonardo make this denunciation in a painting intended to honor a wedding? For those seeking knowledge. Dialectics is the means through dialogue of knowing what is, as true knowledge, which is distinguished from ignorance and also from opinion. It is synonymous with philosophy. The philosopher is a dialectician. Dialectics can then be considered the only true science. It is the knowledge of reality. Those who argue claiming authority do not use intelligence, but memory. Truth is the only daughter of time.